Democrats want big spending on social, which botches everything within the borders of the United States, tries to police the world. Is it really proper for the U.S. government to subsidize rich allies like Germany and Japan, to decide which set of thugs should run Nicaragua, those guns, and try to jail heroes like Bernard Goetz who defend themselves? Something is drastically wrong with America.
Welcome to On Second Thought, where William Wagner gives you information that ought to give you second thoughts about the unconstitutional acts of our local, state, and federal government. I am Megan Wells. Now, producer and host of On Second Thought, the good guy in the white hat, William Wagner.
Thank you, Megan Wells. Thank you for the great intro. I'm William Wagner, the guy in the white hat, taking it off for you. Sorry to interrupt my regularly scheduled program tonight. Here on Take Back America, a very interesting state of world events have just transpired, almost invisible to the American people and to people in Australia, but very visible to the people in Iceland and very visible to the people in Cyprus. Cyprus, a few years ago, was having an economic crisis with the bank gangsters. I like to call them the bank gangsters. Some call them the Bilderbergers, some call them the Illuminati, some call them the Council of Rome or some other title, but Trilateral Commission, whatever. I lump all these things, they're connected by what you spend, the money. What most people have never grasped and still don't grasp is that these things that you have in your wallet or your purse, the paper things, the stuff the credit card is, it's not money, it's currency. Currency, but it's not money. Real money is made out of silver and gold, and you can't destroy its value by melting it down. It still has the value of the silver or the gold. Currency, however, is created by the elite bunch of bankers. I just call them all the bank gangsters. In Cyprus, about a week ago, the bank gangsters tried a muscle move. And the muscle move was, we're going to have a banking holiday. We're going to close the banks for an indefinite number of days, not more than a week. And then we're going to take 6% out of everybody's checking account or savings account if they had less than a certain amount of money. And if you had over that amount of money, they were going to take 9.99%, or roughly 10% of everything in your account. Now, no law in Cyprus gave them the right to do this. No judicial order gave them the right to do this. They were just going to do it. And I thought this was significant enough to interfere with my normally scheduled show today, Friday, the 22nd of March, when I hadn't planned to do this show. And the reason is this. We don't know if they were really going to go through with this or if they were just testing the waters, dipping their feet down in the waters of open and blatant thievery. Most of us take our money, we take it out of our wallet or out from our hidden place at home. We take our money out and we go put the stuff we call money, but it's really, this is just paper, it's just currency. Anybody could print this stuff. In fact, some people do, and they're called counterfeiters, and then there's the official counterfeiter, the Federal Reserve Bank. But we put them into banks to draw maybe 1% interest these days, or 0.5% interest. And the theory is our money is safe in there, because we think it's our money. This is false. It's not our money. You may have earned something denominated in American dollars or Australian dollars or Kiwi, New Zealand dollars or Canadian dollars or English pounds or whatever your currency is. The real, the peso, the Deutschmark, French franc or Swiss franc or whatever your currency is. You may have earned something and you saved it in denominated, but that isn't real money. Because the people that issue that currency control it. And they keep flooding the market at a certain rate. And it's called the M1 and the M2 and the M3, and they've got all these fabulous, fancy formulas. But the bottom line is, they can go into those banks and say, we're going to take the money out, even though you didn't give us permission. This is like wholesale thievery by the banks that you thought were protecting your money. It's not safe there. And at some point in time, they could just take it in America or in Australia. I think what they did in Cyprus is they dipped their little dirty paws into their realm of let's see how the world reacts. And I think they picked Cyprus in particular because Russians, the new Russian millionaires and billionaires, have been piling up their money there because they're not real comfortable with Russian banks and Russian politics under President or dictator Putin. I have nothing against Putin, but he used to be the head guy of the, I think it was called the KGB, or the equivalent of the Russian CIA and assassination squads. And isn't it interesting, in the United States of America, we have had George Herbert Walker Bush as president, who used to be the head of the American equivalent of the KGB, to us known as the CIA. Isn't that interesting? Russia, new leader, is a guy, Putin, who used to run the KGB, and America's leader, about the same time, became the former leader, was the former leader of the CIA, George Herbert Walker Bush. And things have gone downhill in America ever since. Things have gotten better in the Soviet Union, or what we used to call the Soviet Union. It's not so united anymore. It's broken into many states in Russia. Now you look at what they just did. Whether they actually go ahead or not, it was supposed to happen today, and I'm not sure. There's mixed accounts. Did they actually take 6% or 9.99 or 10% out of some people's and not others? People were withdrawing their money as fast as they could as soon as they heard it. But what they are not talking about is that certain people connected to or related to the Warburg family, the Mellons, the Onassis family, and the Rockefeller and Rothschilds. People connected to the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Onassis family, they had noticed that this might happen weeks ago when there was not a whisper. We'll have to wait a week or two to see whether they actually went through with it and stole the money right out of the bank that was supposed to be saved or not. We don't know yet, but it's a telltale of where the international bank gangsters, as I call them, want to go. They want to show you they can take your money right out of the bank where you think it's safe. Now, I can't say for sure, but I heard a rumor that with all those Russians having lots of money in those Cyprus banks, Mr. Putin was deploying some Soviet ships and moving them a lot closer to Cyprus. Maybe just war exercises. We'll have to wait a week. But it's a telltale of what may yet be just around the corner. Now I want to talk about Iceland, who a few years ago had economic woes, And they solved it by arresting and hauling the bank gangsters off. Or at least what they did is when the interest rates and things got too terrible, they simply said, hey. And the women went with their pots and pans and they went down to the Icelandic parliament and they're going clang, 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 clang on their pots and pans so they couldn't get any business done. Not a word about this on the CNN, ABC, Fox, BBC. Not a word were we told that this little tiny island of Iceland had threatened the bankers. But first they had to throw out their entire Congress. They had a kind of a plebiscite vote. Should we kick everybody out or keep them? And it was about 90% to throw everybody out of the Icelandic parliament and 10% to keep them. Isn't that interesting? So all of them went out with that vote and they elected new people. And the first thing the new people did, because they were really angry about foreclosures, bankruptcies, and all that sort of thing, they were really upset. They just swept Congress out. I think Iceland is giving America a cue of what America should do. We should have a national plebiscite on throwing everybody out of Congress. All the U.S. senators, all the congressmen, nobody allowed to stay. We sweep them all out of office and they are barred from holding office for, say, 6-7 years. Any office. Dog catcher to congressman, they can't be in any office, nor can they be a lobbyist. Then we elect all new people from the ground level up. And they must be people who have held nothing higher in office than maybe a city councilman. Nobody from the state senate, nobody from the state assembly. We want ground level people who have not been in office, who have not been corrupted. Why should we sweep them all out? People, oh, even Rand Paul? Yes, even Rand Paul. I would rather sacrifice one Rand Paul, even though I think he's a chip off his father's block. He's probably a wonderful U.S. senator. He did a 13-hour filibuster trying to stop a minuscule part of one of Obama's most dreadful laws, giving Obama the right to assassinate citizens, American citizens, anywhere he wants to. And he filibustered, I guess, for one single reason. Just to say he can still do it, he can still kill American citizens anywhere, just can't kill them in America. Wow. And he couldn't get a lot of people in Congress to support him on this? So he had to do what they call a filibuster. Just talk endlessly and endlessly for 13 hours. If he couldn't get a majority of the Senate to agree with him that the president should not have, not just Obama, no president has ever dared to claim the right to assassinate Americans with no legal charges against them, no crimes proven, just, I don't like them, they might be a terrorist, and so I'm going to kill them. Push a button, send somebody in the Air Force with a Predator dome, kill somebody who's an American citizen. And the only thing Rand Paul was filibustering about was to stop it from becoming a thing that could happen in America. So he could still kill Americans on a cruise ship out in the Caribbean between Cuba and, say, Venezuela or South America. He could still shoot Americans on vacation in Spain or Germany or Indonesia or Japan. This is insanity. What's even more insane is the talking heads like Bill O'Reilly and Nancy Disgrace and these idiots that all claim Michael Jackson was going to prison. These same kind of idiots can't seem to find the balls. Well, of course, Nancy Disgrace never had any balls. But they can't find the chutzpah to stand up and say, this is just patently wrong. On the face of it, it's wrong. We have to end the endless war. We have to face the truth. We have to discover it, because some of you are still sleeping, and you think some 19 terrorists with little tiny knives that stick out about this far took over planes, commandeered them with little tiny box cutter knives, scared everybody, and flew into the Twin Towers and the 7 World Trade Center building and the Pentagon. All of that is garbage. Planes may have hit the Twin Towers. No plane hit the 3rd building, 7 World Trade Center, and no plane crashed into the Pentagon, regardless of what you've been told and told and told and lied to. And that's what Hitler did. He lied and lied and lied, and people went along with the lies. And one day, while Hitler was broadcasting all over Berlin, "We are winning the war. Keep on fighting. We are winning the war." Bombs were falling on Berlin. And Hitler went down into his bunker. And the lie was exposed. So, I thought it was worthy of note, because in Iceland, when the new parliament arrested the bank gangsters, guess what? Some of them got on their private jets and flew immediately to Belgium, Netherlands, and London. Get out of Iceland before they put you in the Huskow, in jail, in the prison. 1 or 2, I guess, got caught. One of them managed to sprain his ankle as they wrestled him to the ground, so he couldn't get to the airport. I think we should sprain a few ankles of some Rothschilds and Rockefellers. If that's what it takes to get back control of our government, to start issuing silver dollars like President John Fitzgerald Kennedy tried to do, actually did get them minted after he was assassinated, but that was the reason they assassinated him. It had nothing to do with Cuban missiles. It had nothing to do with Fidel Castro. All that was CIA propaganda, disinformation, so we would not track it back to the Rothschilds, the banking elite that kill people to start wars so they can make money, lending their fiat money they create out of thin air to the governments like US, Germany, France, whoever, doesn't matter what country. They create it out of thin air. They lend the money to the government goes in debt. Then the government has to pay down the debt, and you, the taxpayer, have your taxes upped and upped, and the value of your dollar or your peso keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Meanwhile, the politicians are stuffing their own pockets as fast as they can. I think some of you have seen that FBI video where they caught this congressman, I think in Florida. Literally, they offered him a bribe. It was a setup. And the congressman was literally caught on tape taking the wads of $10,000 in a stack and stuffing them in his pocket. Yeah, he went to jail. One went to jail. Whoopee. One congressman went to jail. Whoopee-doo. Clean house. I think Iceland had the right idea. We have a national plebiscite. We have the ballots counted by old people like you and me in the precinct. No vote scanning machines. No vote scanning machines. No Diebold. No Sequoia types or the next generation. All that is garbage. That's how they steal the elections. That's how I've got people who do not represent us. Right here in this county, in this state, in this country. Italy threw out those machines years ago. It only took one election and they knew those things were being used to rig the elections. That's why we keep crooked sheriffs like Los Angeles has, who covers up for the deputy who killed these 2 little children. Joey, Rachel, age 7 and 4. And then the wrongful death lawsuit is sabotaged by their own attorney in my First Amendment opinion, and I was the only person in Judge Hatter's federal courtroom down in central Los Angeles, right across from where the Conrad Murray trial took place, Kinney Corner. I was the only one there, and they wouldn't let a camera in. They wouldn't even let me take notes. Now, since when is it illegal to take notes in a courtroom, when you're in the back row and there's nobody else in the entire courtroom except the parties at interest and the reporter. Judge Hatter sent his bailiffs, no, Mr. Wagner, you can't even write notes. You're not allowed. No cameras, no notes. This is Nazi America. Of course, I could write to the federal judicial panel and complain about Judge Hatter. I don't think it'd make any difference. They're all crooked. Show me one judge who's not crooked. Can we find one? It's like when the Michael Jackson trial was going on. Can you show me, I would say to Tom Sneddon and Gordon Auchincloss and Ron Zonin, please show me one witness that doesn't get caught in their lies. They never could. All their witnesses that tried to say something bad about Michael were caught with their own lies in their mouth. Caught. Bingo. Same thing with federal judges. This article I recommend to you, it's by Stephen Fleury. It's called, this is a cover story. You can also find this on constitutionalguardian.com or judicialaccountability.org. The rule of lawyers, how it's replaced the rule of law. The rule of lawyers. I highly recommend it. It's good reading. It's very short, but in the end of it, you get it. You get the point. We have lost the rule of common law. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. We have two choices. We can go like Iceland did, the little Icelandic island, and we can arrest the bank gangsters. And as a result, the interest rates came down. There was mortgage forgiveness, foreclosure forgiveness, bankruptcies were canceled, and Iceland is prospering, even though they defaulted on almost all of their national debt. Not all of it, but the vast majority of it. I don't know the exact percent, 93% or something of the national debt. They just said, we're just kissing it goodbye. You guys are, you illiterate bank gangsters who create money out of thin air. You're getting zero for that. And they said, oh, we'll teach you. Nobody will lend Iceland any money. You'll go into utter poverty. Just the opposite. Iceland is booming. Their economy is strong. I think the bank gangsters were just flexing their muscles, trying to see how far can we push before the people will wake up. Maybe we've got them so fluoridated with fluoridated water that kills their brain cells that we'll be able to just go right into their bank deposits, just go right in there and take the money. And they did. Well, with that said, there's a gal who also didn't get justice. Her name is Christina Ilsley. I want to take a look back at Christina Ilsley. I have championed her cause to get her little son, Justin, back. And just briefly, I'll just run through it briefly. And I'm going to show you some tape of Christina. Because she died last month in Montana, trying to be as close to her son as she could. And I remember her when she'd first lost her son, and somehow she found me on the internet and connected. And she asked me, do you think it'll take a week or 2 weeks before I get my son back? I mean, I'm a disabled person, and there's the Disabled Persons Protection Act and all this. They can't do this to me. And I said, you're up against the Agenda 21, and it's part of their goal to steal your children. So I started interviewing her. I actually got video of her son when they shipped him off from the Orange County, California airport, all drugged down. This little 8-year-old boy, they drugged him down. So when he had his last visitation at the airport, where he would last see his mother, he would not know. Justin Ilsley, I want you to know, son, your mother, Christina, loved you to the day she died. She fought as hard as she could, the best way she knew. She tried to learn the law. She filed motions. But the rapist, murdering scumbags of Child Protective Service in Los Angeles and Orange County that have already killed more than 20 children and lost accounts of them and then disappeared the records so that no one will ever be able to pin down Miss Love and the other creepy CPS workers there who are responsible for dead and missing children in CPS. This is what they do, Justin. Your mother simply was clueless. Her only crime, son, was being clueless. She simply didn't know how evil the American government had become, that we had through diversity and through VAWA and every kind of federal legislation that's all unconstitutional. She didn't know the system was being designed to steal you, not just you, but millions of children from single parents and even from two-parent families. On any excuse, any pretense, rewarding the kidnappers, aka social workers or CPS workers, and their bureaucracy with bonuses from the federal government, with fiat money from the bank gangsters. All this, Justin, was done to destroy the great relationship you had. And I want you to know, Justin Ilsley, or whatever name they give you by the time you turn 18, I want you to know your mother truly loved you. She truly did all she could to stay in touch with you. And she died up there, I think February 9th, in Montana, not far from where you were being held prisoner against your mother in a, quote, foster family, where they were given money to put in indoor plumbing and didn't even use the money to put in the indoor plumbing. And even the people at the church where those foster people went worked and conspired to keep you from seeing your mother in the church and letting you know she was there for you. She was trying to get you back. She just didn't know how. And her one mistake was she didn't pick a good dad for you. She made one mistake, and you have now paid for it. And she became so stressed over it, she died, literally died from cancer, caused by the stress CPS did. And they beat her up, and they threw her in jails. And I'd like to show you now, if we can, or maybe we can't, Christine Ilsley. So let's go to the tape, the other tape, and hear from Roger Wiedner, a former prosecutor who knows about these cases and used to be on the wrong side, and he came on this show. Christine Ilsley, rest in peace. You did all you could. It was a mission impossible because they've got a whole federal bureaucracy and state bureaucracies and county bureaucracies filled with hateful, nasty social workers. Watch this, and I'll be back a little later. Oh, we're not ready to roll the tape. Let me read you a little bit from this article, The Rule of Lawyers. Jesus Christ's message generally led audience to respond in one of two ways. He astonished the general public. He angered the educated elite. Jesus Christ. We read of both reactions in Matthew 22:33-34. After seeing how the multitude were moved by Jesus' words, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, those were the two religious political parties, gathered themselves together. They didn't usually come together, and they plotted against Christ. Now that's a radical rabbi preacher, Jesus Christ, who could get these two divergent factions of the Judaic religion to come together just to get rid of Christ. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked Christ a question, tempting him. Verse 35, Put to silence by Christ's message, the leading Jews conferred among themselves and then sent forward their lawyer. He wasn't interested in truth. He wanted to tempt Christ, to trick him into doing or saying something unlawful. But Christ would not be tricked. He knew how to expose the chicanery of the so-called experts in Mosaic law, or the law of Moses. In verse 46 it says, "No man was able to answer him a word. Neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions." Yet this was toward the end of his ministry, as we will see. Jesus Christ had several confrontations with lawyers prior to this, and in every case they persistently dogged him, trying to expose any flaw they could find, even after Christ put them to shame. It was quite some time before Christ was finally able to silence the lawyers. His situation is not unlike the one we face today. The litigation explosion concerning today's presidential election controversy, some have suggested that it has given every American a wonderful lesson in civics, showing our government how our government works. While that may be true, the political dispute has also revealed the near fatal flaw in American society. What used to be a nation ruled by law is now ruled by lawyers and lying talking heads in the corporate media. Gavin Isler, writing for The Independent in London, noted America's propensity for being over-lawyered. In the Stephen Sondheim song, when something bad happens in the circus, they send in the clowns. In America's political circus, they send in the lawyers. Now, I'm going to give you a lawyer who used to be a bad dude named Roger Widener. And then one day, he developed a heart, a conscience, and he switched sides. And he came down, and by the time I got him on the show, Oregon had disbarred him for telling the truth. Take you back now to my show with Roger Widener.
State your full name.
Sure, it's William G. George Figg, F-I-G. W-I-L-L-I-A-M George F-I-G.
Are you appearing under subpoena?
Yes, I am.
Are you a lawyer?
Yes, I am.
Where do you practice?
Sussman Shank, LLP.
Did you represent Daniel Butler in Sutton?
Yes.
Was Mr. Sutton occupying some real property that Mr. Butler foreclosed on?
Yes, I've represented Mr. Butler in an FED action related to the property.
So was that an effort to remove Mr. Sutton from possession of the property?
Correct.
Were you successful?
Yes.
Did Mr. Widener make a courtroom presentation during that FED case?
Yes.
If you look in that exhibit binder, is identified as Exhibit 4 within Exhibit 6, you'll see a transcript. Does that transcript reflect one of the appearances by Mr. Widener that you had to deal with?
Well, you got a problem there.
I show Exhibit 4. There's a 4. It starts with 4B. That's what I'm looking at.
Can I approach you with?
Yeah, I think it's the first Exhibit 6. is the declaration of Mr. Rubin,
Right.
which in turn have attached exhibits. Maybe back to the wrong exhibit 6.
You were looking at what I tried to describe, which is Exhibit 4B within Exhibit 6. Does the board have that? Thanks.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yes, exhibit, page 4B.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer. Is that a transcript of a hearing that you and Mr. White both appeared at?
Yes, it is.
What was your hourly billing rate at the time of that hearing?
Oh, wow. It was between $225 and $250.
Was that a reasonable billing rate for a lawyer of your experience?
I believe so. I've been practicing 14 years.
Do you have an estimate of the amount of legal fees that were incurred by your client, Mr. Butler, because you had to respond to the various activities of Mr. White in this particular case?
I believe we did print out our billing for the Butler matter and the parts that I was involved with, and I was not involved in all aspects of representation of Mr. Butler regarding Mr. Sutton. The FED, up through the FED, I think we estimated was around $4,000.
And is that the total amount or the amount that you estimate was attributable to responding to things that Mr. White did?
That was the amount estimated responding to what we had estimated was extra work necessitated by Mr. Widener.
Did part of that work include having to monitor the docket for filings out of concerns that either Mr. Widener had served you with things that weren't filed with the court or filed things with the court that were not served on you?
It did involve monitoring the docket. I was not involved in that particular part of the case.
Was that Ms. Semler?
It was, and I guess by way of brief explanation, after the FED concluded, there was also a elder abuse civil case also filed in Multnomah County. And after the FED concluded, the elder abuse case continued on for some period of time. And after the FED restitution was entered, my involvement pretty much ceased regarding representing Mr. Butler.
I'll ask her about that. I have no further questions on the record.
You've been practicing for 14 years?
Yes, I passed the bar in 95.
Okay. Did you have a chance to interact with Mr. Sutton on any occasion?
Very briefly, at times when he would come in and serve me with different pleadings involving different cases, but at no point, I don't think I ever held a more than 3-sentence, how you doing, fine, but thank you.
So were you aware that he has been diagnosed as clinically mentally impaired?
Objection irrelevant.
Are you aware that he's certified for ADA? And I want to put this all under an offer of proof, Judge. Were you aware that he was ADA certified, that he was a member of ADA, Americans with Disability?
Your Honor, could we have the offer of proof at a later time?
Yes.
Okay, we will put it on.
Well, I'm not going to, Mr. Whitener, I am not going to let you abuse this process, as you have abused so many processes in this court and other courts, and subject even more people to a further waste of time in about irrelevant matters. In the name of an offer of proof about irrelevant matters. If there are additional matters, if you want to, I think we could stipulate you have filed numerous documents about the representations that your representations of the nature of these events of Mr. Sutton's injuries. But what Mr. Figg may or may not have known about Mr. Sutton's mental abilities or lack of mental abilities is not relevant to this proceeding.
I want to take strong exception with with that characterization.
So you know it's not true because of why?
I know it's not true because I verbally spoke to him about Tom's disabilities. We had an AD officer who spoke to him about Tom's disabilities before the first hearing for the Butler case ever began. It's not true because I verbally spoke to him about Tom's disabilities. We had an AD officer who spoke to him about Tom's disabilities.
I know you do, Mr. White, and I am taking strong exception with it. Mr. Figg is a licensed attorney. He's licensed by the Oregon State Bar, and he's licensed in order to protect the public. And he has come after Mr. Sutton for a client, and I'm entitled to know if he's aware of his mental state of his
Mr.
mental
Figg's
condition.
mental state has absolutely nothing to do with any matter before
It
this
has
court.
everything to do with it.
It has nothing to
It
do
has
with it.
everything to do
Mr.
with it.
Widener, that's my decision to make,
That
not
is,
yours.
you said previously, Judge, and I'm holding you to this, that you are a neutral in this. This is an adversary system. I want to make this very clear. This is an adversary system. Plaintiff, defendant, neutral judge. Neutral judge.
Constitutional due process.
Neutral judge.
Absolutely,
Neutral.
Mr. Widener.
In an
Neutral does not mean you
This
win
is a
every
witness called
time.
against me. This is a member of the Oregon State Bar that has been called by the plaintiff, who has been prosecuting me for 20 years, and you say my conduct is I'm going to show that this is an entire criminal racketeering activity that's being undertaken by the bar. I'll ask for the moment. Mr. Figg, were you aware of the underlying business transaction that you were foreclosing on Mr. Sutton?
Call the Oregon State Bar, 503-378. Give them a ring. Did she look neutral to you, that judge?
Her body language spoke to the exact opposite of that statement. She seemed annoyed, agitated, and ready to make a decision on the spot.
That's the way I would interpret it also. I think most normal human beings would say that was not a neutral judge. Roger was impeaching the credibility of their star expert witness, and the judge is saying, no, that's improper impeachment. You can't impeach their credibility that way. It doesn't matter. All it matters is that you were giving legal advice, trying to help people. Shame on you, Roger. Shame on you trying to help the old and the elderly and the befuddled while they're being swindled out of their property. Shame on you, Roger. The state bar is going to punish you, Roger. How ridiculous. People, when are you going to take back your country? This is ridiculous. We should abolish all state bar organizations. California State Bar, abolish them. They won't do the right thing when they know it's... We got Christy Stanley, who didn't even pay her fee or license for a year and continued to practice law. She should be in jail. She didn't disclose. I'm talking about this county, Santa Barbara, California. She didn't disclose on her Form 700 that some old lady gave her $1 million property with 20 acres. Oh, gee. And then after she wins her election, then she suddenly remembers it and discloses it. That's a misdemeanor. And she's our prosecutor? She should be in jail. She should be disbarred. I'm telling you, the Bar Association of this state and virtually every state, especially New Jersey and Nevada, are just total racketeering. They fit the RICO statutes. RICO, R-I-C-O.
I'd like to know when Attorney Figg goes under trial for federal perjury.
Yeah, you notice Beth was saying he lied.
Yeah, so when does his trial begin?
Well, that's going to require some of the people in Oregon, Joyce. They're going to have to stand up and bang on that Attorney General's phone and say, hey, we just saw a video of Beth. You get Beth into court and you get that Figg into court, and if he committed perjury, get that ADA certified officer into court and put Mr. Figg in jail. Not just suspend his license for 5 or 10 years. Put him in prison. If you or I committed perjury on the witness stand, they wouldn't hesitate to put you or I in prison. Don't you think, Joyce?
Immediately.
Immediately. Not like Orange
Drop of a
County
hat.
Sheriff Mike Corona, who I said when I had our sheriff, Santa Barbara County Sheriff Jim Anderson on here off camera, I said to Jim Anderson, you know what? Sheriff Corona, one of your buddy sheriffs, one of the 58 of California, he's in trouble. And that was like 2, 3, 4 years ago. Well, guess what? Sheriff Corona has been convicted by a federal judge after a federal investigation by federal agents. He's been convicted, he's been sentenced, and then the judge let him walk out the door. Why? He's sentenced to 5 years and 6 months in the state pen, Club Fed, for Sheriff Corona, and he's walking around right now as I'm sitting here with you, Joyce.
Well, perhaps it was to tie up his loose ends.
That's right. His son is graduating from high school, so he can't go to prison till his son graduates from high school. Hello, people out there, all you out there. How many of you that have ever gone to jail were given the excuse that, oh, I got to stay out of jail till my son or daughter graduates from school? What? It's because we don't have enough representation. That young guy, Michael Warnken, go see his website, CaliforniaCommonwealth.com. CaliforniaCommonwealth.com. Watch the videos. Read his argument. He says we should have no more than 30,000 people in each assembly district and no more than 30,000 people for each House rep. That's what the U.S. Constitution states. Moving on. Did you have another comment?
No, you've covered everything.
Are you sick yet?
I'm disgusted.
Are you disgusted, people? She's disgusted. We got CPS workers stealing children, losing the lawsuit. Oh, I didn't tell you. Hazel Spies is a school teacher in Oregon, and she's also, I feel, still a foster mom, and she's the one that took Wilbur Gaskin's little 4-year-old girl, seen here, took this little girl, had her undress in front of a video camera and do a sexy dance, and then tell her to say, Daddy made me do this, Daddy made me do this. They made a porno film. Now, I haven't seen the one film that's locked up in a judge's safe. And you know what? They won't let Wilbur have a copy of it, not even under discovery. It is so damning they've got it locked up in a judge's safe. And he won the lawsuit. Had he lost, Wilbur would have gone to prison. But a jury of his peers, well, maybe they weren't all as old as Wilbur, but a jury, an Oregon jury, found these judges were in conspiracy, the CPS workers were in conspiracy, the cops were in illegal conspiracy. And they awarded Wilbur, this Wilbur, looks like Santa Claus out of uniform. They awarded him $500 million, jury verdict. It was overturned on appeal, but I understand the state Supreme Court or a higher court reinstated the verdict. Then, because of other bad things that was done to Wilbur and his much younger wife, who was not the daughter, not the mother of Melissa, other bad things they did, they won a $16 million judgment. Then Pamela was murdered. And that's a whole other show. And the sheriff refused to investigate the murder. And when I called the sheriff's department in that county in Oregon and I asked about it, I got click.
And to this day, he's still not allowed to see the evidence presented against him?
Well, he saw some of the evidence, but not the videotape of Hazel Spies, a school teacher to this day in Oregon. Nor did Mr. Lawson, the CPS head muckywuck up there in, I think it's Portland, or a place just, he's still employed by CPS. He's still a high muckywuck hotshot in CPS. I'm so outraged. I think a militia would be entitled to go arrest them and put them in their own private jail. These people are criminals, and the government of Oregon is covering up, because if Wilbur ever got that tape out of the judge's safe,
It would be damned.
If I could show you, of course I'd have to blur things out, even though the little girl was only 6.5 or something. But it turns out there was more than one tape made.
How did Hazel even amount to acquiring the tape.
She was ordered to make the tape
She was ordered
by Mr. Lawson. She was a foster parent and a school teacher, and apparently, according to the record I read, she was ordered by Mr. Lawson, a CPS head muckiwuck,
to have this child undress.
Undress, do self-masturbation, touch herself, take her clothes off, and do a sexy dance with some music. And apparently, according to Wilbur, you can hear the voice of the people telling her to do this. And then they're telling the little girl to accuse her father and say, your daddy made you do this.
Why is this child not being put on the stand? Why wasn't the child put on the stand? Or was she?
She's been made a ward of the state so they can keep her mouth shut. Do you think now you understand why they still won't let her go back to her dad? She's 19.
Yes.
And they still won't let her go back to her dad.
Well, if they already took him for, what, a total of $66 million, what'll they take him for now?
I swear, people would have, there'd be lynch mobs going after Hazel Spies and Mr. Lawson. If you could see what they did to this good dad who made a mistake of having a kid by a woman who's not a very good mom. That's why she lost all the kids. But the one that was his, he rescued from the system. And then the system reached out, grabbed that little girl, put her back in the system.
After only 25 months.
25 months with her dad. And Wilbur told me, and so did Wilbur's sister, said it took 6-7 months for that little girl just to calm down, just to get normal again, because she used to scream for no reason. Right. She would just start screaming.
Right.
And it took her 6-7 months because of the abuse that little girl Melissa suffered at the hands of lesbians in the CPS and the foster care system in Oregon. I think we can all figure out why they won't release that videotape. However, turns out there were more than one tape made. And one of those tapes I may yet get my hands on.
I believe you will.
I never thought I'd find Wilbur alive, and he's still alive and very alert. And I got his interview coming up on another show. Now do you see why when she says corruption of our state, local, and federal government, I ain't kidding. We are being ruled by criminals because we don't have we the people in the state assembly. We have nothing but lawyers that lie and lobbyists, and more lawyers in the executive branch and more lawyers in the judicial branch. Not saying every lawyer is a dirty, rotten scoundrel. But I think I've only met 2 that maybe aren't, maybe 3, and I've met hundreds of them. So, what do you think of CPS?
I personally have a 3-year-old, and hearing this, it really sends chills down my back. I think that if they ever did this to my son, I think I would end up in prison.
Now you know why that woman up in Northern California walked into the courtroom and shot the man that had molested her son?
Without a doubt. That's a very easy thing to do.
He was going to get probation after a few months in jail. And that's where the trial was going. And she just said, no, you're not. Settle that. If we can't get justice, you know, courts were designed to end trial by battle. We used to settle scores, what they call trial by battle. There was a famous duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, I think it was. That was one of the last trial by battles there was. In this country, we don't like people doing trial by battles. Because if you have an Arnold Schwarzenegger coming to trial by battle with someone the size of Joyce, Joyce may not have a fair chance. So the theory is you go to court and you hire attorneys that are really on your side. Ha ha, wink, wink. And then you get a fair shot at justice. But we can't. The courts are so thoroughly corrupt. Not very long ago, I watched a judge here in Santa Maria say this is a constitutional court. And then he proceeded to go on, but this is a quasi-criminal proceeding. Well, if it's quasi-criminal, then it isn't constitutional. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say you can have a quasi-criminal proceeding. It either is criminal or it's not. It's like being pregnant or you're not. Can you be quasi-pregnant, Joyce?
No, no.
So now apply that. Say that again, Joyce. Can you be quasi-pregnant?
No. No way. You're either pregnant or you're not.
Exactly. And in a criminal case, it's either a criminal case or it's not a criminal case. But if you're going to employ criminal sanctions like jail, then you must allow all the criminal defenses. All the criminal defenses. Anyway, we're losing time, and I want to get you to this very good research done. This is scientific research by architects who understand what brings buildings down. And if you don't understand that CPS is a dirty, rotten, scoundrel, scumbag organization from top to bottom, then you just don't really know what's going on. Just talk to Wilbur Gascon. I'll let you talk to him. I'll let you talk to you. Coming up real soon. Well, that was a quick change of wardrobe. We can do quick changes here at the studio here in Santa Maria, California. A place I'm proud to say probably would not exist if I had not made a big stink about 13 years ago. Fighting for the right for you, me, and anybody to do your own show, and plenty of people are doing it. Well, that was Joyce, and that was a throwback to an earlier show. I hope you enjoyed that. What I want you to remember is we need to arrest the bankers, arrest the bankers, arrest the bankers. They need to be put in handcuffs. No, I'm not talking about your local clerk at the bank, a local bank. I'm talking about bank managers of the Federal Reserve. They need to be in handcuffs and taken to jail. And then $280 billion of the gold bricks that disappeared from the gold depository at the Twin Towers lower floors in September 11th. Actually, from September 8th to September 11th, they were secretly removing them. All those bricks were just being taken away. Gold bricks, your money that used to be in Fort Knox. We need to put those bankers in jail. The New York Federal Reserve bank gangsters, the Atlanta Federal Reserve bank gangsters, the San Francisco Federal Reserve bank gangsters, the Nebraska Federal Bank, put them all in jail. And then I've got some suggestions of how to liquidate the national debt, student debts, all of that stuff. We toss it like the people in Iceland did when they arrested the bankers. But remember, first we have to have a plebiscite with honest counted paper ballots, with real people counting them, not machines. We throw out the entire federal Congress of the United States. Maybe we should throw out the entire 80 assemblymen in California and the 40 senators too. I mean, nobody, once they're in, they're in. You can't beat the incumbent. As Mike Warnken proved in the show years back, not one of them ever lost to a challenger, because once they're in there, they represent 1 million or 500,000 people, and the corporations buy their loyalty. There's nothing you and I can do. We have to have a plebiscite, throw them all out of office, even the good ones. You know, Rand Paul is, I think, a fine senator. A chip off his father's block, the doctor, the honorable, very honorable, the most honorable congressman I've seen in my entire life, maybe with the exception of Barry Goldwater, was in my life. Before that, probably the last honorable congressman is Congressman Crockett. Was probably the last honorable congressman we saw, or Daniel Boone, or somebody like that. And then there was Barry Goldwater in the 50s and 60s, and then there was Ron Paul. But we have to clean house. We have to have a big broom, and we sweep them all out. All of them, Lois Capps, all of them, Democrat, Republican, they all go out. That's what Iceland did. Then they elected all new people who had never held office before, and then they were able to arrest the bank gangsters, and Iceland's economy is booming. It's the mouse that roared. That's what we need to do. Anyway, watch this tape. I'll be back in a few minutes. It's short, sweet, and it tells you how we can solve America's dilemma right now. Within weeks, our economy could be booming. Watch. It dwarfs the mafia. It dwarfs Jesse James and every robber, burglar you've ever heard of. Mr. Paulson at the Treasury, at the U.S. Treasury, is now, apparently, because they won't tell us, everything's done in secret session now, he's been given the power to bail out anybody he chooses, make deals in secret, and tell nobody. AIG has just been bailed out in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and maybe even trillions. But since things are done in secret, we don't really know for sure. Then there's all the others, Wall Street bank gangsters, I call them. They did a terrible job. They ran their businesses bankrupt, and they wanted the stockholders to take it in the nose. They want you to take it in the nose. Meanwhile, you struggle in your day-to-day life just trying to get by, just trying to put bread and soup on the table, fill up your tank of gas so you can get to work or get to where you need to be, take care of your family emergencies. There's no bailout for you. You've done a good job running your life, for the most part, most of you. You've managed to keep going in spite of the leeches I call the Federal Reserve System, or the bank gangsters, sucking the lifeblood out of America. Well, I want to make a proposal. They say, oh, things are looking like depression, we're going, jobs going away overseas, substandard pay, people can't pay their mortgages on the amount of money the jobs that they're getting pay. I've got a solution. Let us all, whatever your perspective, since the Federal Reserve has now set the precedent and Congress has given a go ahead, do what you got to do, okay on it, they've set the precedent to bail out anybody, no matter how bad a job they did. Well, let's bail out all of us, even those of us who've done a relatively good job in these turbulent times. Let us instruct our Congress critters that they bail us out. What do I mean by bail out all of us? What I mean is we instruct our Congress critters to give us, those that have done a mediocre or fairly well-to-do job, let us instruct our Congress critters that they bail us out. Pay off all our credit cards with Federal Reserve notes, those paper things you fold and you put in your purse or you put in your wallet, those things that are based on no gold or silver anymore. These things. Yeah, let's tell them, hey, take these things, pay off all our debts. Pay off our credit cards. Pay off our home mortgages. Pay off everything. Yes, pay off your credit card. Pay off your neighbor's credit card. Pay off the down-and-out guys that all they got left is a credit card. They're already homeless. Their cards are maxed out. They can't get a motel. They're living out of their car. Pay off everybody's home mortgage. Pay off their debts with Federal Reserve notes. Just keep the printing press. They're going overtime anyway. They don't even print the money now. They just go click, click, click on a computer, and there's billions or trillions of dollars to the bank gangsters, the Wall Street people who have triggered this economic decline. But it isn't just their fault. It's all of our faults. We have a collective guilt because we have allowed the Federal Reserve, which violates Article 1 of the Constitution. You know that section that says, nothing but gold and silver shall be minted in the United States? So we have a duty to put America right. But how do you do that when your Congress doesn't listen to you? Remember Bob Schultz? He's the guy that starved himself for nearly 30 days on 10th and Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. One congressman would listen to his petition, and then he reneged and backed out. The IRS agreed to have a meeting. Then they reneged when they saw media was going to cover the meeting. So, since the Federal Reserve has set up the system to bail out AIG and bail out their favorite bank gangster guys that put cash in their congressional reelection funds, bail us all out. Aren't we supposed to be equally treated under the law? Isn't the Constitution supposed to affect us all equally? So why should these bank gangsters on Wall Street get special privileges? I don't see that they should. So pay off your mortgage, pay off my mortgage, pay off everybody, your neighbor's mortgage, and for the renters that don't have a mortgage, let's order the Federal Reserve to pay whatever the rent level was a year ago or today, 1 year's rent paid in advance. So even the renters that don't feel they have anything to gain by supporting this, they get 1 year's free rent. Of course, we will have to require that people not take a lien out on the property that just got paid off with Federal Reserve notes for 1 year. Otherwise, people would simply go out and indebt themselves again and blow the money like a drunken sailor.
What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning? Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. Shave his belly with a rusty razor, shave his belly with a rusty razor, shave his belly with a rusty razor early in the morning. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. We'll put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober early in the morning. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. Stick him in the scupper with a hosepipe on him, stick him in the scupper with a hosepipe on him, stick him in the scupper with a hosepipe on him early in the morning. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. Put him in the bed with the captain's daughter, put him in the bed with the captain's daughter, put him in the bed with the captain's daughter early in the morning. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. That's what we do with the drunken sailor, that's what we do with the drunken sailor, that's what we do with the